Hey,
How's it going,
Danielle.
Tom?
Good. How are you? Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, I'll just say thank you off the bat so much for taking the time to join me for this session. It's been really great getting to know like your line of business a little bit over the past week or two, and consumer engagement is definitely a passion point of mine. So it should be a really great discussion. I was
Oh,
thinking.
totally. And it's at the forefront of everything I'm doing too. So I think that this will be I'm really excited to talk to you about it.
Wicked. Awesome. I was thinking it might be nice to just kind of set the stage before we get into some more specific questions by just having you tell us a little bit about your role and the type of work that you do at TD.
Sure. So I've had a marketing for retail card services for our brand and our retail partnerships. I oversee all the strategy and the marketing communications across our B2B and our B2C products. My role has a pretty broad scope across a couple of different areas. And so my team is made up of brand and creative. I'm fortunate enough to have a few studio guys within our organization, helps with a lot of turnkey elements, especially speed to market, because we work with a lot of retail partners. We have customer marketing, and I'm just so proud to say we do a majority of our communications are actually done internally, leveraging Salesforce and all the tools that we could utilize there, which I could have another complete conversation about, right? Fantastic relationship with them. And then we also have key partner marketing managers, and they are really the ones that are driving a lot of the guidance for our partners around acquisition and engagement, as well as how to align the product strategy and implement throughout the customer journey. So, a part of retail card services, we sit as a business unit within TD, and TD being just that great organization, I think we're all very familiar, especially you being in Canada, right?
Yeah.
They're really employee centric and customer centric, and that kind of follows through everything we do. So for me, engagement is at, like I said, the forefront of everything as far as the customer journey goes, and we really, align to that thinking as well. So we've had a really great momentum and experience and been growing the team, which has been really exciting. So what we do is we offer products and services to integrate into our into the retail commerce platforms. So what that does is by partnering with these retailers and businesses of all sizes and across all industries, we provide them the ability to offer their customers the ability to pay now, to buy now and pay later. So kind of the payment solutions in the form of point of sale solutions, as well as private label credit cards and installment loans. So, these are really services that help amplify the holistic experience a customer may have with the brand, as well as just brand awareness and equity from the lens of the consumer. And what we try to do is, when properly managed, obviously through the top of the funnel all the way down, this is really a good driver of consideration and then, increases conversion.
Awesome. Well, that's great context that you
Yeah.
throw us. You actually have a very long job title, so I think it's helpful for you to kind of take us through and break it down a little bit. I was glad that Emily did the job title versus me having to do it, because it's a
Nice.
mouthful.
Thank you.
I think consumer engagement is a really interesting topic in the context of banking, in as much as I know, at least speaking personally, like particularly when I was younger, I often resisted any kind of like interaction with my bank. And the bills would show up and I would always be kind of reluctant to open them, or I'd get communications from them and I'd always be a little reluctant. And I think the research even shows that most people feel like they have a very transactional relationship with their bank. So I'm curious how you've seen that change over the course of your career in FI, and what strategy you have to start to create more meaningful connections with your customers.
Yeah, and I think that's a good question. I think we could all agree that I think that relationship has transitioned from what we see today with our banking relationships, because they're kind of embedded in everything we do, whether we actually know it or not. So it has been a more, that transactional relationship. And for me, being in the partner landscape, I have to bring a lot more of that warmth to the consumer, because I'm aligning more to the brand and sitting in a little bit of the back and bringing in that tone. So I need to drive that meaningfulness. And so for me, I really leverage a people-based marketing strategy and try to be as thoughtful as possible through that whole communication. So a few areas that I look at for success are clear call to action, right? I mean, this is a emotional thing that you've just done, whether it's interacting with your day-to-day bank, whether it's a financing loan, whether it's simply a, split payment option. This is something that anything that does with finances, it brings more of that emotion to the table. So you really have to have clarity of message, because there's going to be something else you're going to require of that consumer. And in order to do so, you need to have that dialogue that's warm and comforting in a way. And then education. I think a lot of the times where there has been just unknowns with your banking relationship, like where is my money? What is it doing? How do I get to it? Where there is so much more access to that today. And I think that's the key driver of diversification of products, right? Where you can see and be more in control of your finances than you've ever been before. You can either elect to have help or choose to do things on your own. So I think that has been one of the key drivers of transformation. And then at the end, it's just inclusivity of personalization. Again, I think that access to the information helps to drive that, because it's all more relevant to you. Who am I? What do I need? What am I trying to get towards? So whether it's a holistic banking from an investment perspective, or something that you need today, because if you need furniture because you just bought a home, I really need this. So my end result is, how do I get this furniture today? And then how do I afford it? Oh, look, there's this really great line of credit that I could have, and I could then have this furniture today and pay over time. So those are the three areas where I look at for meaningful interactions. And then on top of that, it's all about what we like to call in banking is called an EMOB, which is this early month on book interaction. Yeah. And for me, I came into TD and we only had one single email. And so again, like I said, that's not very warm and comforting. If I just kind of made a purchase, I have to pay you, but I don't know how. So we like to drive this EMOB communication, which is an onboarding series that takes place that helps, not only give you that first impression, which is needs to be positive so that I can get what I need out of you as the marketer, but also I need to inform you of what happens next. So it's that journey of understanding, hey, listen, here's what this call to action is about. And then, hey, you can expect XYZ from us again. And then you'll hear from us again. And it's all about that continuation of communication to get to the end results of eventually what I want from you is probably to auto pay your bill, drive your preferences, self-service, and also make another transaction. So I think that those are really key elements of those interactions.
That's really interesting. I'm curious, you mentioned kind of that ongoing dialogue. How do you go about striking the right balance in terms of frequency of communication, wherein you're not kind of overwhelming them with communications, right, but then you're also showing up frequently enough to maintain a meaningful relationship?
No, that's a good question, and one that I think we get asked a lot, because at the end of the day, I'm building my own engagement customer journey for the customers once they're in the door, but we want and need our partners to also do the same. So that balance of frequency on both ends of the spectrum. But for us, we write really specific business rules. I kind of like to follow the cadence of mostly in my industry, like a 14-day cadence. So, 14 days of a business rule from when I talked to you last time. And then on top of that, that's aligned to all the business rules, is a prioritization. What comes first? What is the most important thing that you want, especially if you have a couple different emails that can go out, or communications or touch points that can happen within the same time frame. And then also, it's all based on behavior. So it's super, super relevant. So, when we're building very hyper-targeted communications that are just relevant to whatever activity is that you just took. So that's the key, is that it's all based on behavior analytics.
Yeah, great. You also mentioned kind of the evolving nature of people's relationships with their bank. And, one of the things that we've seen particularly accelerated over the past year and a half is a lot of that relationship shifting online, where people are buying more online and people are leveraging digital payment products. Can you talk a little bit about how TD is taking advantage of this shift to deepen customer engagement?
Sure. I mean, this is a super exciting time to be part of this payment landscape, right? So it's an incredible evolution. The speed at which this has all happened, I can't even wrap my head around sometimes, but the product ecosystem is so large and it's just continually growing. And I'd like to say that there's, at the moment, enough room and space for everybody in the right way. And I think that's the interesting part. But obviously COVID, and this is across industry, this is nothing specific to banking itself, but the digital first habit just accelerated, it blew up because we were forced to do things differently. And I think we all could agree too, from a generational perspective, when it comes to technology, and ease of use, of seamlessness of trying something new, it does tend to skew a little bit younger, just because that trial isn't as big of a barrier for as you age, right? Because I'm in my structure. This is what I do. I know exactly what the outcome is. It fits into my day. I don't want to learn something new. And I think that COVID and the pandemic just accelerated what was already happening. It was just going to probably take longer to get there.
Yeah.
But the payment landscape has just really just like blown up. And I think it's not just the fact that it's not just contactless or things that you could do that are easy. It's just the peer-to-peer aspect of payment, and the ease of transaction, where, if I don't have cash, how do I get cash so easily? I have to actually go out and get that cash, right? So
Yeah.
there's just an ease to that that's just phenomenal. And then when it comes to purchasing, I mean, I think it's ridiculous, but time becomes something that, 5 minutes was short, maybe 10 years ago. Now 5 minutes is long. What can really take me 1 minute? And I don't have to, that form is too long. How is this transaction that I'm going to make so seamless that all I need to do is press a button?
Yeah.
And the behavior just changes with that. I think that those bigger conglomerate, like the giants of like Amazon, have just transitioned us completely to be so like, this is it. This is convenient. One click and I'm good. I don't have to do anything else because I got to get to that other thing that I've been doing. And without us even knowing, payments, financial services are embedded in our everyday. I don't even know if we realize how much of it is, but it's unbelievable. So I think that it's really like just an awesome time, to be in this exploding space and to kind of navigate it, because there's still so much room to grow.
Yeah.
And there's also a lot of challenges. So for us, we're really looking at those cohesive UX experiences. That's the number one. How do we drive some cohesiveness, consistency of messaging? And that's, at the end of the day, what's going to get us to where we need to go, internally and externally, with our partners.
And can you talk to me a little bit about how, like, what that actually looks like if I'm making an online purchase? Like, you mentioned some of your payment programs. I think TD Fit Loan is the name of one in particular,
Yep.
I believe. Like, what does that look like when I'm making a purchase online, and how do you show up in a way that makes that a very seamless experience?
Sure. I mean, I think that the greatest thing about having an opportunity of having even, a financing option when purchasing is looking at, and I think we could, if you look at anything, you could see it this way, is that monthly payment option. Breaking down the total and breaking it over time has become so a part of our norm that you expect to see it everywhere. So when making a payment with the TD Fit Loan at checkout, similar to with our revolving line of credit products as well, it's just an ease of seamlessness of understanding, okay, this product here, I'm going to purchase it. I'm going to pay this much a month. Here, look at this information. I'm going to go apply, fill out a few forms, fill out the form. It is applying for a loan. So, if you're to understand exactly what you're doing there, but everything just happens within, minutes of your just application getting approved. And then you get a notification about, where to go to pay. You have a dashboard of information that makes it really easy to know when your payments are due, setting up auto pay and just set it and forget it. And now you have this awesome product in home.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of amazing that it can all happen so quickly and seamlessly now. It's very cool.
Exactly. I know it's balancing your checkbook, it becomes something of it's archaic, right? I don't even know if I ever really did a balancing of a checkbook
Yeah.
myself, to be honest. But like, you don't, it becomes completely different what that means
Yeah.
today.
Well, and I was even just as you were talking, trying to think of the last time I went to an ATM, and even that, it's been a really long time since I've done that or really carried any kind of cash in my wallet. Another one of the trends that we've seen really accelerate over the past year or two has been the rise of digital-only banks like Chime or Wealthsimple that offer a more kind of self-serve approach to banking and investing in payments. Can you talk a little bit about how you see those neobanks impacting more traditional banks? I mean, you mentioned a moment ago that it's such a broad landscape these days that it feels like there's kind of room for everyone. But can you talk a bit about what impact you see some of these digital-only banks having on the broader
Sure.
landscape?
I think it's really the other interesting component is diversification of options, right? I think what we, and I don't even know, I mean, time has gotten so fast that I can't really pinpoint this moment when we realize that you don't have to have one holistic relationship with an individual bank. And I think that's the challenge being in this financial services industry that we face all the time is having a customer like view that spans across your product of your suite of products. So I could bank, and I am one who does bank at a couple different places. I do diversify, but you can have checking and savings here with another types of savings here with investments here. As long as you're keeping it under control and it's at your fingertips, it makes it a little bit easier. So what I think is interesting, what's happening is this obviously a digital transformation on the traditional banking side is happening where traditional banks are becoming digital and digital banks are trying to become traditional. I just think that the ease of entry and the opportunity that a digital bank has is that when you have that peer-to-peer payment vehicle and that makes it really seamless and easy to get in, you're already in the customer, you're already a warm lead, they're already engaged with you. So from that perspective, it makes it that barrier of integrating or being introduced to that bank a little bit easier. So I do feel that that's where these digital banks do have a little bit more of an edge on a traditional banking relationship, because as they're growing, now they have credit. They all have a credit card, a debit card, retirement, whatever you need, they can offer it to you. They have interest savings accounts. So I think that competing in that space can be challenging because I don't even know if everyone knows how to even engage with the traditional bank to set up a checking account. Meanwhile, I already have means of entry into these digital payments because I'm already executing and engaging with them at some way with like a peer-to-peer payment. So I think that part is where is really interesting as far as like where we're growing. So, I see it as twofold. It's the way we bank and that digital transformation and how engaging the payment tools are, whether it's you making a transaction online. It could be even in store now. Some of the payment vehicles can be taken in store with QR codes and such, which is also amazing. And then the way we pay. So that also is taking that evolution to a different level.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm curious, knowing that people are often banking with multiple different banks and are kind of going for this mixing and matching approach to their banking, does that impact how you design and market your products, like versus coming at it from a more like holistic approach where we'd like you to do everything with us, knowing that they might be doing their insurance over here and they might have their mortgage over here and their checking over here? Does that change how you think about your products?
I think it changes how we think about our products today.
Yeah.
I couldn't speak, probably not a few years ago. I think we are looking at silos of products and they're even organized in a bank of a business unit. Like I sit in this side, I don't talk to the person that's over here. And meanwhile, we're going after the same customers. We're looking at the same purview of opportunity, but we're not talking. So my product may get them in the door quicker than yours. But for some reason, like you're the one who's in front of their face. And I think that's where obviously a lot of predictive modeling comes into play with AI from a web perspective. But I do believe that as we think about products today and how to build platforms, that they need to drive flexibility. It's amazing, but the customer, and this is another cross-industry element, is in control. We as consumers are sitting behind the wheel. We are literally driving the evolution of change by our behavior. And when we are, as business owners, think about it, what kind of product could I build that could stand the length of time when that just changes again? So in order to build that, we need to look at flexibility and say, okay, consumers just want to be flexible because they're going to do whatever they want anyway. The options of choice are just, all over the place. So we need platforms that can pivot, can transform, and can be adaptable. So it's no longer, I need to build each time. I just need to transform each time. So what does that mean? And how do we do that in a way that makes the most sense so that we're not constantly going back every 10 years and trying to do something different?
Yeah. That's really interesting. That's really interesting. I know that retail partnerships are an important part of your role. And kind of looking back at your LinkedIn account and your history, I saw that while you were at JP Morgan Chase, you managed the implementation of the Hyatt credit card product and business strategy. And I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about that, what some of the challenges might have been, what some of the learnings might have been that you were able to apply to your role at TD.
Sure. Yeah, so I was at Chase for 5 years. I actually come from the agency side prior to banking. So
Right.
my world has always been about partnerships and relationships. I think I can say that's kind of my thing. I enjoy that. Mostly because I don't only get to learn about the industry I'm in, but somebody else's. So, and I could speak to that so greatly because being at Chase, it was an awesome experience, great knowledge sharing. I think it really set me up well for what I do today. Obviously in collaboration with everything I learned from a few different of the agencies that I was able to work within. But, working with Hyatt, they were a tremendous partner. And, the biggest challenge when you're working in retail is having that relationship that goes beyond just the people that you work with. So the biggest, opportunity is to getting deeper within that and looking at from a broader scope and saying, okay, it would be great if I could talk to this department head about this and we could get them involved in this. And when it came to Hyatt, it took a little bit, but eventually once we kind of showed what the opportunity was in order to have those conversations, it opened the door. And learning from that was just tremendous because once we were able to do that, we were able to do so much more data sharing, which is the absolute key to retail partnerships and relationships. Is because if we're not sharing any of the behaviors and the data, then the strategy doesn't exist, right? So that's the most important part. And when I was there, one of my key first things to do was kind of reimagine email. And coming from the agency side, this was like, I got this. This is my thing. I'm going to come in. I'm going to have a really, really instinct view. And then all of a sudden I created 50 pages of a deck. And I was just like, all right, so I got some thoughts and I'm about to execute against all of them. But it took a completely different purview of where we were, where it was looking at customers and all the behaviors that they have. And that's where we took and aligned our data to say, this is what we're trying to get at. This is who we want in the end. And this is what we want them to really do next. And then take those data variables and build a really streamlined, cohesive message across not only email, but we also started to do programmatic media against those same people. So really diving within the data was the key, element of my experience there of kind of driving the business in a different direction. And it didn't always work because sometimes if you, and I'm not afraid to say that, but when you utilize too much data and you kind of get too granular, then your results are kind of skewed, right? Because it gets too small. But what we were able to say is, again, leveraging a people-based marketing approach is here are individuals, here's where they are. And then using personalization at scale, we could say, this is the content that they need to see in order for them to take the action that we want. And then we could build lookalikes to drive, on the prospect side. So that was kind of where, that was really a lot of the tremendous work that we did there. And I've taken all of that consideration and kind of came to TD and said, here's what I need to build. This is the journey that I'm looking, this is my vision and the journey where I want to get to, and driving a lot of behavioral tactics of engagement.
And is that the primary narrative when you're reaching out to potential partners in terms of your sales pitch? Is it more around a more cohesive database understanding of their customers versus a more traditional loyalty play?
It is. It's a combination of both, but you bring out the word loyalty, right? And I think that another thing that has taken its evolution is loyalty because, I don't know if we're ever really truly loyal anymore. It's more, you don't drop those kind of elements, but it's more affinity based. For example, I'm reading Quantum Marketing by Rajamanar, which I mentioned to you, right? And he talks a lot about this, about winning customer preference. And so at the end of the day, what I like to talk about more is in this world of choice is how do we integrate in the most absolute way with you guys that this customer understands the relationship that we have and that your business goals and objectives and our business goals and objectives are met across that holistically. And a lot of times that's all it is. It's the true partnership, knowing that we're here to support them and we're going to provide them the best practices and the best opportunity of integration to drive engagement. Because that's what it's all about. I mean, sometimes, especially with an installment loan, but a revolving line of credit, it's getting that incremental spend that is challenging. or even in the co-brand credit card space. Outside of the premium acquisition, it's driving that engagement beyond once you get your X amount of points or nights for your spend. How do you keep that product top of wallet? How do you keep our line of credit top of mind? Because it's not the same kind of concept, but being able to drive them back, saying, hey, listen, you have some money to use. Let's reintroduce you, and what's that right message? And that's what partners need to. That's what they want to see from us, is how do we help them establish that?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a couple questions left, but I'll just invite anybody who's watching this to feel free and submit your own questions through the Q&A tool, and we can get to those for our last couple minutes. But the next question I wanted to ask you, Danielle, is just kind of broadly speaking, I mean, you mentioned what an exciting time it is to be in the FI space right now, and how, you know, things feel like they're changing largely in a very exciting way. Can you talk a little bit about what some of the biggest challenges are that you're facing within your line of business, and what recommendations you might have to try to solve them?
Sure. I mean, obviously, scalable solutions, right? I mean, for me, in the partnership world, but I think across anything, is just having that opportunity of how do you build for one, how do you build for all and not for one? I think a lot of us face that when we, like I just said, you build for flexibility, but you also have to build for scale. And that's one of the challenges that we face regularly. Transitioning your CRM to be what's called like a CPM, which is that contextual preference management. So not only having the data and storing it, and maybe having profiles, but how do you work against it? How are you driving that perception? How are you driving affinity? How are you driving preference? And really build against that. So that is a challenge that we constantly have to kind of look at and identify some key opportunities to integrate against. And then the customer expectation. I think that is one thing that has just risen as well. Like our expectations for brands, products, servicing, everything has just risen and is at probably the utmost high. So trying to meet that expectation is really lofty. So, and that's a challenge that we constantly face as well, is just how do you provide that dialogue or that understanding from a customer's perspective, especially in this rising competitive landscape. So a couple of different ways we just look at it. One is understanding the customer mindset, again, really driving down from a relevancy and what's the value. In my perspective is just simplification, like going back to the basics, brand awareness, getting to the top of the funnel all the way down is kind of really driving that message of clarity and being there again. I think what we as brands and products forgot about a little bit is driving that purpose or story and doing more storytelling. It's getting through the clutter, right? So how do you get through the clutter? Sometimes there's not enough room for the storytelling, and we're relying so heavily on social media to do the storytelling for us. But how do you bring that back into your journey itself, that you're everywhere with that kind of cohesive message?
Right. And for you, what is that story first and foremost in the context of TD? I know that your kind of brand platform is unexpectedly human, but more so in your line of business, what is the story that you're trying to tell?
Well, the story we try to tell is basically is like we're here for all the things you need today, tomorrow, and in between, and we offer these payment options in order to achieve it. I think that's the biggest opportunity, right? If you can get a whole house of furniture and pay over time for it, that concept, although not new, is just at the forefront of everybody's thinking with the way that the landscape has evolved with split payments and pay over time vehicles.
Yeah, great. So we did get a question that popped into the Q&A. We kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but maybe we can dive a little deeper into it. So the question from Nilesh is, all the decisions seem to be derived from segmentation and knowing customers better and even predicting behavior. How is it that TD has evolved from pre-pandemic to today? And what are the challenges that you foresee in times to come from a consumer experience perspective? So I think we touched on one or two of those themes, but maybe Danielle, if you can add a bit more context, would be great.
Yeah, I think that, to be honest, like I said, the pandemic kind of accelerated where we were already going. So we were already acknowledging some of this space and the challenges and the competitive landscape prior to where we are today. obviously, yes, we do a lot of segmentation on the engagement side of a known customer, and then what that interaction is. But I think it's also how are we evolving from a servicing and self-service platform? That is another area of opportunity that we do need to revisit, especially as there seems to be, especially as interactions go. We are solely through a brand or a partnership. So what does that mean? And where do we need to like really look at our products and services and how they relate to our business? But I think that, we're still working through what it means for tomorrow. But I'm really excited about the path forward, especially as I'm growing my team. I'm just been looking at, we have, like I said, great momentum. I'm just expanding the team, and I'm really looking forward to kind of like the next, 9 to 12 months of what that looks like as we build out our journeys and our engagement and our touch points across more things than just, more things at the location. So more physical things, more stuff in store. Yeah. I think that's where, as we get out of the pandemic, is where we need to grow, because you can rely on all this digital engagement, but it's really about the mobilized moments too. So when I'm not here, when I'm in store, how do I drive consideration at that point of sale as well?
Yeah, great. Let me ask, when you kind of take a bit of a step back and look at your role, how do you measure success, both for yourself and for your team, more broadly speaking? I mean, we've touched on some of these bigger picture themes, but what does success look like for you from kind of a big picture perspective?
Well, talking to you, right? So I think for me, having this opportunity.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah, check. No, I think, for me, we have a fantastic culture at TD. I can speak volumes about that. And, but I'm all about empowerment and teamwork. So I'm a former athlete. So I have that mindset of, we win together, lose together. I am a lead by example type of person. Right now for me, measurement of success is a little tricky when it's in the partnership world too. So, KPIs and such. So I like to look at things more holistically as far as like, what are we contributing as a team? I think that's the number one thing. So how are we contributing to the overall goal of the organization as well as to our partners' goals? And, so success for right there is number one. Focus. So obviously I have to drive a very clear message and vision across the business, and making sure that my team is very focused on the path ahead, because I could get a little, the execution timeline could be a little, maybe I need to stand it out a little bit, but I would love to kind of move a little quicker. And then obviously this working from home environment right now, communication is key. You can get stuck in silos when we work from home. Although it's very doable. We've been doing it where I have a great team. I guess, again, I am not me without them, but communication is key across the board.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are things that are, some of those that are important to all of us, kind of regardless of what industry you're in terms of, particularly over the past year and a half,
right.
Figuring out ways to communicate and make sure that everybody's able and empowered to do their job in a productive way is really important. I have another kind of lofty question for you, which when I was writing it, I started to think about what the answer would be for myself. So I'm curious to what yours is, and then maybe I can share mine afterwards. But what advice would you give to your younger self at the beginning of your career, given everything you know now?
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I probably should write these on my wall. But number one, don't take yourself too seriously, right? I think this space is fun, especially marketing, advertising, right? It doesn't, I don't think, get outside of maybe, coaching a soccer team for me, my second life. But outside of that, like this is a fun place to be. Don't apologize for hard work done. So that's one thing that I had to learn over time. I think that a good example is that 50-page recommendation and proposal for email. I remember very specifically, I walked into that office and I apologized for the heftiness of that deck at the time. And when we walked out, my manager at the time, who was only my manager for a few months, but he gave me this piece of advice that just stuck. He just said, never say you're sorry for hard work and the effort you put into something. Because especially if it's coming through that this is something that you're really into and that you're going to act on it. And that kind of really stuck with me. And then the last one is don't be afraid to ask for help. I feel like, asking for help is a strength. It's not a weakness. I have a hard time. I'm still learning that one, like when and the hows to ask for help and what's appropriate, where it doesn't look like I can't do something on my own. And I think that one I really need to put in bold in this office or something.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think all of those resonate with me, particularly the first one. When I was thinking about what my answer would be to this question, it would be, at the end of the day, it's only advertising, so it should be fun. Don't take it too
Right.
seriously. We did get 2 new questions pop up in the chat, and I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 of them. The first of which is, how are you determining where to spend time on emerging technologies? So I know, as we said, the industry is changing rapidly, and it can be tough to tell where to place your bets. So how do you and your team evaluate where you want to put your focus, and how do you try to determine, which ones are going to matter in the years to come?
No, I mean, that's a great question. I think that depending on your business and playing to your strengths is how you should focus, right? So sometimes you have to think inside the box versus outside the box. Like, what are your strengths as an organization? Focus on that, and then just build on top of that. But I think that right now I'm all about seamless and flexibility. So, what kind of platform and product would drive that end result? As far as an organization goes. And then as far as like the team and and marketing and the initiatives that I put forth for my immediate team is just looking at all the touch points and how to drive the most desired behavior through them all, and that making sure that we're talking to people the way that they want to be spoken to, and then that'll drive the outcome that we're looking for.
Yeah, great. And then I think we have time for this one last question. How do you see media partnerships evolving, especially in TV, in 2021-22?
We don't do a lot of obviously TV on my end,
Yeah.
but I think that the evolution of the media landscape is an interesting one as well, just because I have some insight into some of that just from some people that I know. But I think it's an important factor to understand that it's not going anywhere. So
Yeah.
it's just a matter of, it's kind of the same concept that we're in today, where that customer at the circle at the center has all these options, and you just need to be a part of the space. It's the same concept across the television and broadcast and everything, all the different subscription services that you can offer, but you still need to be there. You still need to evaluate your key demographics and understand where are you going to get the most value out of that person, as either where they are today, or if you have a product that kind of like, grows with somebody as they get older and they age out or age into what you're offering.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, I think that's it in terms of questions. So thank you again, Danielle, so much. This has been super informative, and it wasn't necessarily a line of business that I was super familiar